What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Get Back. My name is Daniel, and this is our weekly hockey recap show. Talk about all things hockey all the time. And today we have a very special episode. It is the trade deadline special. Trade deadline happened today, March 7th or March 6th, depending on when you're watching. A lot of deals went down. A lot of teams got better. Some players got traded. Some players didn't get traded. Some players maybe should have gotten traded. Some teams get better, some teams get worse. The trade deadline, a lot of stuff happened. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Let's start from order of which this news broke. Going back all the way to March 2nd, with the Edmonton Oilers acquiring Connor Murphy from the Blackhawks for a second round pick. Good move for Edmonton. I like that they're bolstering their D line. I think their goaltending problem is still their problem, but getting help on that defensive unit to kind of solidify that and going to the playoffs, you need kind of that nitty gritty type of player. Connor Murphy is that. I think he's a very solid defenseman. I think he does a good job stabilizing that D line and bring some size and physicality there as well. Edmonton's interesting. I think they're still a ways away from where they should be, but they're third in the Pacific, just ahead of the Kraken, and the Sharks are breathing down their neck. But I do feel like this really does help their move and does help them, kind of get a little bit better defensively. So good for them. Um, the Golden Knights acquire Cole Smith from the Predators for defenseman at the round pick. I think this is a good move by Vegas, gives them some strength. I think you're going to see a lot of these moves happen, especially now during this past week. Teams need to get some grit, some veteran leadership, some playoff mentality in there. I think Cole Smith does that for them. I think he kind of helps that room a little bit. It's a very veteran locker room anyway, but I feel like he just kind of adds to that. You can never have too much depth going into the playoffs. You can never have too little of it. So any move that kind of laterally helps that out is good for them. So the Knights, I think, they're going to be fine. I think obviously they're one of the best teams in the Pacific and one of the best teams out west. So I think any move like that to kind of laterally make them better is going to help them. The Dallas Stars acquired Tyler Myers from the Vancouver Canucks for a second round pick and a fourth round pick. This one's kind of surprising. Tyler Myers wasn't really having that great of a year, and he's kind of, I wouldn't call him a fossil, but he's kind of getting up there in age. He's kind of had a reduced role, but Vancouver is Vancouver, and Tyler Myers is a very good veteran player. I think Dallas defensively could use the help, and I think Tyler Myers on a six-line D pair is not a bad thing. I think him being an extra defenseman is not a bad thing. I think he's having a limited role is a good thing for him. I think getting that playoff roster and that playoff mentality, he gets out of the doldrums of Vancouver. So that's a good thing for Tyler Myers. I'm not saying he can maybe refine his game there, but I think it's a good kind of change of scenery for him and a good kind of addition for Dallas. A very low-risk, high-reward move for them. If they're able to get a decent Tyler Myers, they're able to kind of really solidify his trade and solidify that deep pair, especially on the back end. Obviously, you have Heiskanen. You obviously have, some of the better players in the league on the Dallas Stars. So I feel like Tyler Myers really does solidify that and just brings that team together, more veteran leadership, more of a playoff presence in the locker room. He can deliver hits, he can block shots. Decent move from, the Stars. And Vancouver, they're looking to offload. They're looking to kind of, obviously they're just trying to get as much capital as they can in the draft. So, and there was no point for them keeping Tyler Myers, so I think it's a good deal for both teams down the line. The Utah Mammoth acquire Mackenzie Weegar for Calgary for Oli Mata, Jonathan Castagna, and a second round pick. I like this move from Utah. I really do. I like Mackenzie Weegar. He's a really solid defenseman. He's a really kind of low budget fix for a defensive defenseman. Calgary is just having a dreadful year. They needed to offload. I think it signifies to that kind of locker room and that kind of mentality of, hey, we're going to go for this and we're going to try to add to this group. It's a good Utah team. I don't think they're going to go far in the playoffs, especially with the West and how stacked it is. But I think getting that kind of that foot into the playoff after just moving to Utah and establishing that playoff presence in that core and getting that fan base behind them, I think it's a good move to kind of bolster that mentality and to bolster that willingness to want to win. And I think this move does that. Mackenzie Weegar is a very solid defenseman. He'll add to that group already. Again, I don't think it pushes them over the top compared to the Avalanche or the Wild or the Stars. But I think in this playoff push that they're maybe trying to go for that wild card spot, this does help them. I think it does a great job of establishing that they are here to compete and they are here to kind of really go for this playoff run. So good move from them. Again, Calgary's looking to sell. Mackenzie Weegar was one of their few prospects or one of their few players that they could trade off. It made sense. They got a decent haul for him. With a prospect and Ole Mato, who's a pretty decent defenseman as he is already, but not to where he was before. Mackenzie Weegar's an upgrade, and it's a big upgrade. The Oilers, again, they acquire forward Jason Dickinson and Colton Dach for Chicago for Andrew Mangiapane, a conditional first-round pick in the draft. Interesting move for Edmonton here. I think it's good that they're bolstering their back-end scoring. I think that was their problem going into the playoffs last year, which was very hit or miss, especially in the finals. They really kind of shriveled up on their back-end scoring. So adding to that is going to help. Jason Dickinson and Colton Dach do help in that regard. They gave up a lot. I think, Mangiapane is a very good young player. I would have liked to have seen what he could have done in Edmonton, but I understand it. And I think for Chicago, they get a really good player there to pair with Connor Bedard. And a first-round pick, that's always going to help them. But I really do like this move from Chicago. I think they were able to get rid of two really decent players who weren't going to fit in long-term, and you're able to bring in a really solid prospect. For the Oilers, I like Jason Dickinson. I like Colton Dach. I don't know if those are the players to really... And, I get it. You have Connor McDavid. You have Leon Draisaitl. You have the star players there already. Goaltending was still your main issue, and I feel like that hasn't been addressed, and they're kind of avoiding that hole for some reason. I get Matt Murray's Matt Murray, and he was pretty decent, but I feel like going to the playoffs, you need that veteran scoring and that clutch scoring that you didn't get from McDavid and Draisaitl in the finals. And I feel like with how the West is this year, it just is going to be even harder. Now, I think this move does solidify their team going forward. I think this really, with the addition of Dach and Dickinson and Connor Murphy, I think they're set. I think they're going to be fine. They're going to finish as the third seed, maybe the second seed going to the playoffs. I think they're going to be able to hold off, the Kraken, the Sharks, the Mammoth, the Predators. They'll be able to hold those teams off. But I feel like there was a big move in them they needed to make to bring in another elite player. And Dickinson and Dach are good. They're solid, but they don't push that team over the top to where I feel like they're a contender in the West. So I think there was more to be done with Edmonton, and they kind of really just moved the needle from good to great, but not top. I don't think so. The Golden Knights acquired Nick Dowd from Washington Capitals for Jesper Vickerman, our third-round pick and second-round pick. Nick Dowd is a great center. I think it's a great pick by Vegas. Solidifies that second, third pair really solidly. Washington had a weird deadline, and we'll get to it. I think this is one of those bubble teams that is proving that they really don't want to, that they're not going to make a push, and that they feel like they're out of it. Obviously, this sends a message to the players in the room that, not that they're waving the white flag, but this was singling the beginning of the end a little bit. Nick Dowd's a great center. I think he's a smart addition by Vegas. You bring in again another veteran leader, somebody who's won a Stanley Cup before, somebody who's been there for a while. He solidifies the second, third line pair. You need that in the playoffs. He's a penalty killer. He blocks shots. He's a great forward defensively. And he'll bring leadership. So I think it's a smart move by Vegas. Again, I think Vegas is a top team. The rich get richer here. I think their main competition is going to come out of either Colorado or Dallas. As they're trying to set up for that, and they're bringing a very defensive-minded team, and they're trying to add to that kind of nitty-gritty core that they have, and they're trying to really shut other opposing team centers down. I think Nick Dowd does that really well. And obviously, you face McDavid, too, in your own division. And I think this move kind of solidifies that. It really brings a really shut-down center to stand on that second, third line and really grind other teams down. So I think it's a great trade by Vegas to kind of do that. Obviously, Mark Stone, Jack Eichel are there to supplement the scoring and do what they need to do. Goaltending, to me, I still think is their main issue, but I feel like this move really does a good job of bringing in that shutdown defensive center to, have a couple of scoring, positions here and there, but he's mainly there to penalty kill, block shots, and to shut down opposing centers. So really good by Vegas here. And Capitals got a decent haul. They get a goalie, which has kind of been a revolving door for them right now. Third pick and a second round pick are never a bad thing. So, and Colorado responded by getting Nicholas Roy from Toronto for a first round pick and a fifth round pick. Basically, what Nick Dowd is going to be for Vegas, Nicholas Roy is going to be for Colorado. He just solidifies it up the middle core with McKinnon. You bring in a defensive guy who's able to kind of shut other defenders down and play the one-on-one game. This team's, they're playing matchups, and obviously in the West you have McKinnon, you have McDavid, you have Eichel, you have Jason Robertson, you have a lot of Rope Hintz, you have a lot of elite young centers, a lot of talented centers. You need players to kind of match up. You don't want to put your best guy against their best guy. That's not really how it works. So you bring in players like Nick Roy and Nick Dowd to kind of solidify that defensive center role, to play on penalty kill or shore up your penalty kill, to make sure you win faceoffs, to make sure you have a guy in there who could, when you need him, if McKinnon or McDavid are not available, you could plug him in to win a faceoff in a key situation. That's what they do. So I think really good move by both Colorado and Vegas to kind of solidify that spot. Toronto here, I think this is them signifying we're waving the white flag. It ain't going to be the year. You can see a couple more trades that Toronto makes later on that really just bury this point into the dirt. Toronto just did not have the year, and it's very, very weird. It's very, very crazy to think about, but this Toronto team just did not have the year, did not have the team, they did not have the players. It was a disaster year from the get-go, and this is kind of them starting to kind of unravel it, and how they can get better later on. The Wild acquire Jeff Pg from Panthers for that round pick. Good move by the Wild. Dallas, again, this is a defensive center. They acquire Michael Bunting from the Predators for a third round pick. For the same exact reason that Nick Dowd and Nick Roy went to their teams, that's why Michael Bunting's going to Minnesota, to shut down opposing centers. Detroit Red Wings have acquired David Perreault for the Senators for a fourth round pick. Goodbye Detroit. I think this brings some bolstering to the lineup, some veteran presence. I think it's a smart move by them. David Perron's a really solid winger. He's a good role player. He'll do his job in the second, third line, maybe even the fourth line. He'll penalty kill. Detroit team is interesting. It has a lot of potential. I think they've kind of solidified themselves as being a playoff team this year. I think they've done enough to do that. It'd be interesting to see kind of where they shake out. I think they're kind of trying to make sure they don't kind of have a disaster like they did last year. Like, I think they need more scoring. Perreault brings that. I think defensively they're okay. Goaltending they're okay. I think it's going to come down to where they can't unravel. There's 20 games to go. You can't unravel now. You can't do what you have happened last year. You can't do whatever happened to them last year happen again this year. Perreault kind of brings some stability to the locker room, brings some stability to the lineup. Consistent player. You know what you're going to get every night. Smart move, low risk, high reward. Good move from Detroit. Vancouver continues to sell off. They trade Connor Garland to the Columbus Blue Jackets for a third round pick and a second round pick. Vancouver, talk about them, they're selling high. Interesting move here by the Blue Jackets, who are sneakily a point out of the wild card spot in the East. I mean, Columbus has had a sneaky, really good year. I think Connor Garland kind of, does he bring them over the top? Maybe, maybe not. Are they a top team in the East? Definitely not. But it's a move that could kind of get them into the playoffs where they haven't been in a long time. And, if you just get in, you never know. So shout out to Columbus. They have everything in their hands to play for. They're going for a little bit. So shout out to them. Connor Garland kind of is a very solid young player. Vancouver was doing nothing with. Change of scenery for him. I think he kind of rekindled what he had when Vancouver was good. So yeah, I don't mind this move from Columbus, signifying they're going for it. I like it. The Buffalo Sabres acquire Logan Stanley and Luke Schenn from the Winnipeg Jets for Isaac Rowe and defenseman Jacob Bryson, second round pick, and a fourth round pick. Buffalo's going for it. I think this move, by getting Logan Stanley and Luke Schenn, you bring in a shutdown D pair. Winnipeg was out of it. They didn't have a kind of situation, some situation with Toronto where like they just didn't have the year. Everything went wrong. Nothing worked out for them. They're waving the white flag. This move desperately helps Buffalo shore up that defensive pair. Dahlin is good, but outside of that, you don't really have much. Scoring wise, they did pretty well. Um, but Buffalo, they're going for it. They are tied for points with the Lightning for first place. I think that's going to change, but Buffalo's, they feel like their team is not ready, is not there yet. They're lacking that veteran leadership and that playoff experience. This changes that. Luke Shen and Logan Stanley changes that playoff experience. It gives them what they need in that regard. It gives them two tough playoff performers who knows what it takes to play in the playoffs and to play well in the playoffs. So, great move by Buffalo. And Winnipeg again, they get a decent haul here. Two really good young players, and a second round pick and a third and a fourth round pick. You take it. I think it's a good move. Um, yeah, shout out to Buffalo. I think it's a really good move by Buffalo. It gets them what they need. Does it get them over the hump? Maybe. But are they the top team in the East? Probably not still, but I think you bring in that, playoff experience to kind of help with that. So, good for Buffalo. And what was a very surprising move, the Anaheim Ducks have acquired John Carlson from the Washington Capitals for a first round pick and a third round pick in the draft. I'll say this. John Carlson is an absolute legend in Washington. I think John Carlson is I think it's a good move for him. He's a veteran player. I think he's playing more minutes than he really should have right now. So I think in that regard, it's a good deal for him to kind of bring down his minutes. But I think he brings that veteran leadership. He brings that, playoff experience to that, Anaheim room, which is very, very lackluster in terms of that. Does it bring Anaheim over the top? Probably. But, good for Anaheim. They're going for it. I like that. I like they haven't been in the playoffs in a long time. They have an opportunity. They're going to go for it. Good for them. Trade that pick. Do what you got to do. Get in the playoffs. I think for Washington, it's a bit more of a different situation. Obviously, they didn't have the year that they wanted. I think it's very similar to, Toronto in that regard. I think the rise of Columbus and New York and the Islanders and Pittsburgh not slowing down, that kind of changed their mentality going into the deadline, and I think it showed that maybe we're not going to make this run. I think when you get a first and a third for an aging player who, is one of your leaders but is getting up there in age and playing more minutes than he probably should, you take that deal. I take that deal. It's a good deal. So I don't mind that from, Washington. I think it's a smart move in the long run. Obviously, it hurts now. It's not what they were planning to do. It's not what they wanted to do. But again, I feel like in the long run, it makes sense. So shout out to Washington for doing that. And I think it's them, maybe this isn't like a rebuild. I don't feel that from them. I think maybe this is more of a retool situation. I feel like this is them kind of not waving the white flag, but it's them kind of signifying that, hey, maybe the older guys take a step back. We'll start, maybe the young players will take more of an advanced role and they'll get more minutes and more time. But yeah, I think it's a decent move from Washington to get really good capital from this, and for Anaheim, I love it. Go get that veteran leader, go bring in that player experience, go get in the playoffs, win a playoff game. Hell yeah, you bring a player of John Carlson's caliber. I think it makes him immensely better. Helps their power play a ton. So yeah, I really like this move from Anaheim. Good for them. They deserve it. Been a while for them, so shout out to them. Now moving on to the Minnesota Wild, they acquire Bobby Brink from the Flyers for defenseman David Chernak. I think this is an interesting move from the Wild. I think for a couple of different reasons. Bobby Brink was having an interesting year. I think he's a player that maybe needed to change of scenery in Philly. I think it was just a lot of expectations put on him. I think it's not the player that they thought he was going to be. I think for Minnesota, they bring in a good kind of tough guy, a good kind of, a good size, a good strength. 13-13 on the year. I think you bring some scoring there to kind of shore up the back end of your team, which has kind of been lackluster, at least. So I think that kind of helps that. But it brings us a good toughness to that group and a good kind of, playoff, fight and playoff experience. I think Bobby Brink kind of helps that in that regard. Minnesota last year definitely went out with a whimper. I think they're looking to get tougher, looking to get more physical in the playoffs. This obviously helps in that regard. and it helps even more with acquiring Nick Foligno, again the Foligno brothers together again. That's kind of fun. Um, Look, I think Minnesota makes an effort to get tougher with these two moves. I think they're making an effort to shore up their fourth line, shore up their kind of checking line, make sure that no matter what, whoever they go up against, whether it's Minnesota, Dallas, or Colorado, or Edmonton, maybe in the first round, they have a checking line to kind of shut down opposing great players, and kind of lay a body on them. You want to tire out the star players on the other team. Nick Foligno and Bobby Brink do that really well. So I think in that regard, it does help them, and it is a smart move to kind of shore up, your back end of your roster, and to kind of get guys who can lay hits down and kind of wear down opposing teams and kind of bring that physicality that is needed in the playoffs. So decent move by them. Tampa Bay Lightning have acquired Corey Perry from the LA Kings for a second round pick. Second round pick for Corey Perry in this day and age is crazy. Corey Perry is a very, very aging superstar. But good for Corey Perry getting back on a for sure playoff team back in Tampa Bay again for this the third time. The group that he knows, they know him, they know what he brings. He'll help the third, fourth line. He'll just bring that extra edge that maybe Tampa Bay was missing. The Tampa Bay is a great team. I think they're already pretty solid. Corey Perry helps them. He brings more depth, more veteran leadership. And to get out of Corey Perry, you know what you're going to get in the playoffs from Corey Perry as well. Again, John Cooper knows him. That locker room knows him pretty well. So I think it's a good move in that regard. They help each other. Corey Perry for sure is going to be in the playoffs now. With the Kings, it was kind of iffy. But now you know for sure that you'll be in the playoffs. So good for Corey Perry. I think for a player of his age and his caliber, to get back in a possible Stanley Cup team is pretty fun. So yeah, good for Corey Perry. Decent move by Tampa Bay. Again, second round pick, low risk, high reward. You have young players already on young contracts. You have your star players already there. You have probably one of the best teams in the league. So good for them. This is an interesting one, in my opinion. Detroit Red Wings have acquired Justin Falk from the St. Louis Blues for a first round pick, a third round pick, and a defenseman and an unsigned forward. This one is very interesting because Justin Falk, I think, obviously had his time in Carolina. He signed with St. Louis, and that kind of hasn't worked out how they thought it was going to. But I think in the same regard, it does kind of help their roster a lot. I think you bring a very good veteran player, you bring in a very good scorer on defense, which is kind of missing in Detroit. Very good defensive play, but you're missing that kind of scoring from your back end. Justin Falk brings that, helps their power play out a ton, brings in that front end. It's a very, very low risk move that could bring a lot of value, and you give up a decent amount for Justin Falk, but I feel like you kind of needed it. I feel like you kind of needed Detroit to kind of get a move to bring them over the top. I think obviously with Tampa Bay and Buffalo resurging, Boston on the brink of it, you have it's a very competitive division all of a sudden again. And Montreal bringing down their necks as well. I think this move just kind of, you make sure you get into the playoffs. This move does that. And I think if you get in, you get Justin Falk, who's a very good playoff player, who's a very good scorer, and you bring an extra layer, an extra element to your team you didn't have before, and you make teams really, really put pressure on other teams extensively. So, really good move by Detroit. St. Louis was going nowhere. They were selling off players left and right. Good move by them, getting rid of kind of that old veteran core that didn't work. So, in that regard, it makes sense. Looking to kind of get worse to get better. St. Louis was going nowhere. So I think it helps Detroit, it helps St. Louis. Good deal by both teams. Washington Capitals acquired Timothy Lindgren from San Jose for fourth round pick. It's a John Carlson replacement. It does nothing. Timothy Lindgren is fine as a player, but it does nothing to replace John Carlson. Just a body for a body. So, bit of a weird move there for Washington and for San Jose. Because San Jose was relatively quiet in this trade deadline. But they're able to recoup some capital for a player who didn't play that much. But I still think it's weird by both teams with that move right there. And then the last two big ones that we'll get to. Last two big ones that we'll get to right here. New York Islanders acquire Brennan Shen for St. Louis for a first round pick, third round pick, Jonathan Drouin, and Marcus Gadot. Brennan Shen going to the Islanders is it's very funny because the Islanders probably have the best center core in the league now. On top of having Barzell and Bo Horvath, and now adding Brennan Shen, on top of also having you know a really solid defensive unit with Anders Lee and Matthew Schaefer, is a great move by the Islanders. I think it wasn't a move that was necessary, but you need the unnecessary move to take your teams over the top. I think this does that for them. They get so much better. They get Brennan brings physicality. He brings scoring. He brings defense from a forward perspective. Takes the pressure off Barzell a little bit. He could play on the top line if he needs to. He could help Bo Horvath out on faceoffs. I think he does so much really well. He helps their second unit power play, maybe in their first unit power play. Like he's a very, very great talent to add to this already young group. He'll bring veteran leadership. He'll bring playoff experience. I think it's a very, very good trade by the Islanders here. They do give up a lot. First round pick, a second round pick, and two players is a lot for one guy. But I feel like these are moves you have to make, especially in the East, where it's kind of wide open in the playoff situation. I think if you're able to bring in a player of Brennan Shen's talents, you do it. Really, really good move by the Islanders. I think it makes total sense. I think it adds to their group even more. So I really like it for them. St. Louis, again, we just talked about the rebuilding. They get more draft capital. They just continue to stockpile picks. So yeah, I think it's a really good trade by both teams, and for the Islanders, they're getting a really good player in Braden Chen, who can kind of do a little bit of everything really well. And playoff series, you need that. So shout out to the Islanders, really good move, really smart move. I think they're going to be a team, kind of a sneaky dark horse going to the playoffs now with kind of this move. Really brings them over the top, in my opinion. And then lastly, a move we all kind of saw coming, but didn't happen until like the last hours of deadline day. Colorado Avalanche acquired Nazem Kadri for a fourth round pick, additional first round pick, a second round pick, and a forward and onside forward. Nazem Kadri was always going to leave Calgary. He was always going to go to Avalanche. Everyone kind of unspokenly knew that. You just finally put pen to paper, and they got it done. So, interesting move there. Again, they solidify their second center core group. They got Nicholas Roy from Toronto, who obviously was going to be now their third line center. Their center core is really good. They're strong up the middle. With having McKinnon on top of having Nazem Kadri there as well, helps their power play, helps everything that they're trying to do. And Nazem Kadri is a great penalty killer as well, great faceoff player as well. So, again, it's a move that maybe was unnecessary, but it brings them over the top, and it really solidifies them as the best team out west with probably one of the best rotations of players that they have ever. So shout out to Colorado, and again, Calgary was always going to sell. They're looking to kind of sell off. They weren't going anywhere. So great trade by them. They get rid of Kadri's contract. So Colorado, the rich get richer. They get even better. They get even more talented. Kadri's a great player. He knows that room well. He's been there before. So the fair trade by both teams. I think Colorado comes out on top, though. Really, really good trade by them. And I'd say for the deadline, in terms of big moves, I do want to talk about real quick a couple players who didn't get traded, which is kind of surprising. Vincent Trocheck didn't get traded from the Rangers. That was kind of one that everyone was waiting to see if that would happen or not. It didn't. He had a half trade list, and the Rangers had a very, very hard price tag that they weren't moving on from. You said you were going to retool, and you really didn't trade all that much to retool with, so I don't know what the Rangers were thinking in that regard. So they were able to keep Vince Trocheck. I'm not mad about it. Trocheck's a great player. He's a great talent. So I'm happy to see him still in New York. We'll see in the offseason what happens there, but I'm sure he's happy to still be in New York. His teammates are happy. I think all fans are happy. He's a really good Ranger. Embodies a lot of what the Rangers are. So it's not a bad thing he didn't get traded, but I feel like it's a bit weird that the Rangers really didn't do much in this trade deadline to kind of retool the roster. Oliver Ekman-Larsson stayed with Toronto, which Toronto really, they kind of sold off a lot of their veteran players. They didn't really make any big moves in terms of Other Nicholas Raw getting traded. They didn't really trade any much of their star talent, and I didn't expect them to, but still, Toronto really held on to some veteran players they really didn't need to. It's been a down year. Try to get what you can, and the fact there wasn't a market for Oliver Ekman-Larsson is surprising. I feel like all the Oilers were a great fit for him. Um, but yeah, it's interesting that he didn't get traded, and Toronto didn't really kind of push that boat. So, Colin Parayko didn't get traded from the Blues near than Jordan Kyrou. Like the Blues sold off, they could have did more. They could have traded Parayko. They could have traded Jordan Kyrou. They couldn't trade Jordan Binghamton. Like there were a lot of moves they could have made. The goalie market was very, very uneventful, which was surprising. Because you had Jordan Bennington and maybe Sergei Bobrovsky on the market, and neither one of them got moved. It's a bit surprising that Franco didn't get moved. I feel like he was probably could have brought a lot of good value, maybe a first, second round pick for the St. Louis, and that never materialized. I feel like Buffalo was a good place for him to go, or even again Edmonton or Dallas could have been a fun place. Didn't happen. Very weird. I feel like that would have been a good piece to trade. Even Jordan Bennington maybe could have went to Edmonton, could have went to Vegas to really solidify that goalie room and help him out there. Basically, the entire Nashville Predator team didn't get traded, which was very surprising. You have veterans like Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Haula, who could have brought in some value, and again, Nashville maybe feels like they're in a playoff race, which they kind of are, but they really aren't. They're one of those bubble teams, but I guess they feel like this is a group that they're confident in, that they feel like can get the job done, that they feel like is good enough to make one more run and one more push. It's a very veteran-led group, so maybe that's what they're thinking. Um, Nashville's a bubble team. They feel like they're gonna go for it, kind of keep this group together, see what they can get out of it. They had players traded and trade them. Simple as that. Vancouver, they could have did more. They had more veteran players. They had Elias Pettersson, Blake Coleman, Rasmus Ristolainen, Flyers of Rasmus Ristolainen. But Vancouver could have did more. Calgary could have did more. Philly could have did more. They didn't. Philly really didn't have much. Vancouver, they had a couple pieces, and then Bobrovsky could have been traded from Florida. His contract's about to expire, but they're talking about an extension. He didn't get traded. They want an extension. I'm not surprised he didn't get traded. I think it's going to kind of keep the same team, try to go at it again next year with the player that they have. So I think all in all, where teams are now are where most of them are going to end up at the end of the season. I think Colorado got better. Tampa Bay got better. Detroit got better. Buffalo got a lot better. Islanders got better. There's a lot of teams here. Pittsburgh didn't really do anything, which is kind of surprising from them. But a lot of playoff destined teams got better, and they're making sure they're making their play. Like the Wild got a lot better. Dallas got a lot better. Like these teams are making sure that A, their playoff push happens, B, they get into the playoffs, and C, they're able to compete in the playoffs. And I think most teams did that. In teams that were on the bubble and teams that were out of it, they did the right thing. They traded their veteran players. They traded their best players. They got good capital. I feel like no one really got robbed. No one really got fleeced. It was a very uneventful deadline in that regard. Everything that we expected to happen kind of did happen, apart from a couple players here and there. But I feel like everyone kind of got better. They needed to get better. Nobody really outside of their bubble went for it or outreached or outstretched. I feel like it was a very fun and fair deadline for a lot of teams. But overall, I think it was just a solid deadline. Nothing crazy, nothing dramatic. Good players got traded. Veteran players got traded. Playoff players got traded. So teams got worse. Teams got better. That's what deadlines are for. And now, with about 20 games to go, it's playoff time. It's the madness of March. A lot of games are going to come fast and furious. Every team's raring to go. Every team's gunning for it now. It's playoff time. So, thank you guys for watching. I've been Daniel. This is the Get Back. Been going for a long time. This has been a playoff. This has been the NHL trade deadline show. This has been a hockey recap show. We'll be back next week with some game recaps and some teams to talk about going to the playoffs and some matchups potentially that could happen. If you have anything you want to talk about, anything you want to discuss, put it in the comments. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Make sure you check out our other content. Make sure you check out our social medias at the Get Back Sports. Make sure you check out all the good stuff on our channel. Make sure you check out our live streams, the casual streams, our main show, all that great stuff. We have a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff going on. It's great. But I've been Daniel. It's been a hockey recap show. This is a Get Back, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.